What's up? Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I'm Morrow, your storyteller for today. With me I have some more RPG horror stories. I have a little bit of an update. After having my brother, my IRL brother, play D&D for the very first time, he has officially joined our campaign and he's playing as a tiefling rogue. Funny enough, also a gambler just like my tiefling, which is twins moment, am I right? He's been having a really good time so far with it. He already got himself to level 5 too as a rogue, so that's actually pretty exciting. I wonder what kind of stuff he's gonna do with his character. Nevertheless, let's get some RPG horror stories for today. I'll point out I thought a comment was rude. I am Judgmental. The owner of my local store was running a draw steal one-shot, something I'm all about. It's an open game, first come, first serve. The day off, at the last second, a person I had problems with in the past joins. This is a person we had to leave a campaign because of in the past. Long story short, I tried to talk with them in game about how them using dehumanizing language to justify killing prisoners made me uncomfortable. And they didn't even look at me in the eye. I later learned I wasn't the only player who left that campaign because of them. I figured it's only a one-shot and I want to play draw steal so badly. I figure I can tough it out and reason if they're just being rude, I can call it out in the moment. For the majority of people playing, this is the first time I've ever played draw steal. GM even flat out saying they're okay with being corrected. I've run once before and I spent a lot of time researching, so I spent a lot of time flipping back and forth to my rulebook. Problem player cites a rule I had previously gotten wrong. I go to check it. They make a comment about page X with the person about to correct me. That didn't sit well with me. At the end of the game, I said I thought it was kind of rude and asked them to not do it again. They say absolutely. I untense. Problem solved though, communicating like adults, right? Wrong. Next word out of the mouth is however. Okay, hold on a second. This is already a lot to go through. So basically, you're playing into a game that you really want to try. You want to try draw steal, and I've heard of draw steal. I think it's pretty well received, although it's gonna be very niche most likely, and not really a lot of people are gonna be playing it. However, more game systems is good because more things that people can enjoy and have fun playing. Plus, draw steal seems like a very D&D-esque kind of system with a little bit of its own unique mechanics, which is kind of cool. I think it's kind of neat. I haven't looked into it too hard, but I've heard some positive things about it overall, like at least positive first-time reception. But you want to play draw steal so badly, you're willing to stomach a problem player that you had problems before, somebody that specifically used dehumanizing language that made you and the rest of the table feel uncomfortable. When you brought up that critique, they didn't really say anything, probably because maybe they're just really weird at person-to-person interacting, or maybe they just felt really bad about it, or maybe they just didn't care. It's difficult to discern with some people. It's some people are just difficult to read. Sometimes it's just easier whenever somebody gets emotional or just like have like a meltdown over a reaction or a critique. But people that stay silent are the ones that are a little bit scary. It's a little bit difficult to really discern what they're thinking because they never let the thoughts out. But I can't imagine being at a table and you correcting somebody and say page X for the person about to correct me kind of thing is just really strange thing to say. It sounds extremely antagonistically charged thing to say. If let's say for example I get a rule wrong as a player or a DM and somebody's like, oh yeah, actually no, I think the level 10 druid feature of the subclass works like this instead. Of course I'll go check and be like, actually yeah, you're right, and just kind of move on from there, and that's the interaction, you know, no fuss, no muss. But if somebody were to be like page X for the person about to correct me, and man, I would feel extremely antagonistic about that person. That's a dick thing to say. That immediately will put them on my crap list personally. Like, dude, we're here to have fun, and there's a lot of information to remember about these specific games, especially if a game that's brand new to you and you just wanted to get into it because nobody's running the system. You just really want to try it out for the very first time so badly because it's the one opportunity to actually play this new niche system. Let's not be a dick about something like that. It's like if somebody comes into D&D and makes fun of mock somebody for not knowing how a specific mechanic works. Yeah, because they're learning and there's a lot of information, dickhead. There's a lot of things to go through. Let's not be dicks about it. I thought your response of saying that what they said was kind of rude and asked not to do it again is very reasonable thing to do. If somebody is starting to say, if somebody says anything antagonistic at the table that puts people a little bit with intention, you should probably say something. If I say something at the table as a DM or a player, it's one thing to set tension for like the in-game, like I guess severity for things, especially if players are doing something crazy or wild, but it's another thing to be a jerk. If I'm accidentally being a jerk without realizing, I hope that my players can call me out and tell me, hey, when you said this that moment, that was kind of a jerk thing to do. Can you please not do it again? And I'll be more than happy to oblige. At the end of the day, I want everybody to have a good time at the table. Jerks don't belong to play at our TTRPG tables, including me if I'm being a jerk for whatever reason. I may be dumb, but I'm not unself-aware. I'm very critical of myself, and I want to make sure that I'm proof for myself and my players at the end of the day. Anyway, let's see how this player responds. They accuse me of being judgmental, that they don't approve and that they think I've ranted at them multiple times. I don't know what the hell they're on about. I might speak quickly when bringing up problems at the table due to the old fight or flight kicking in because I get nervous about social confrontations, but my voice is level, my tone neutral, my language polite, and they agree to my request even though it's judgmental. I understand what's going on there. Beyond some, I want to be seen as polite, but it is like you still, and want to make that known contradiction of the motives. I talked to the DM after this, and the DM broke up the argument, telling them that frankly, I just don't want to play at the same table as problem player anymore. DM considered that I'm not the only person having problems with them regarding the session, and the promise that handle it. I think DM handled this well, and I'm committed to avoiding problem player now. I'm just find myself baffled and frustrated that, hey, please don't speak to me like that can be considered judgmental ranting. Typing this out just helped me get the frustration out of my system. If somebody talks to you in a very jerk-like manner or says something rude to you, it is not judgmental to point out that you're being rude to them. In fact, that is the least judgmental thing you could possibly do. You're voicing you being uncomfortable with someone's behavior publicly instead of like doing something worse. You know what would be a really judgmental thing to do? Suddenly start thinking that they're a terrible, awful person just because of the way they speak, and now bringing up these kind of problems or issues at the table. That would be a judgmental thing to do. Assuming that they're just a jerk forever and spreading rumors and talking bad about them to everybody else. That would be a judgmental thing to do. What you're doing here is voicing a general concern and problem over the table after the game has happened as general feedback for the player because you want to avoid having confrontations with them in the future or having some sort of like gripes with them. Or if they have any feedback to give towards you aside from calling you judgmental, then they can provide that for you. But if they think it's judgmental to say, hey, what you're doing is kind of rude, please don't do that again, in a very polite manner, and they think that's judgmental, I think that kind of, I don't know, man, I kind of find it really weird. I think you guys just don't mesh well. The best thing, and I think I personally agree with the DM's position on this, is you two should just not be in same games together. If they're in the same game as you, either you leave or they leave, or just don't play with them. Just simply don't play with them. It is not worth it. No D&D is better than bad D&D, and if playing with this specific that guy is making you experience worse because of the way they behave and the way they talk rudely or the way they act and conduct themselves in game, probably best to avoid them completely and save yourself sanity. Let's get out to the next story for today. Half an hour of Dwarf fricking. Throwaway because I don't know. And yes, the title is blunt. I don't know what else I could call this. I never actually made a post before. I usually just lurk. So apologies if the formatting is off. Just let me know and I'll fix it. So I was running a game at local community space, and unfortunately only 2 people actually showed up to my game. More people attend the group, but everyone else who showed up was there for a campaign run for another DM. By the end of the story, I was wishing I had just joined them as a player. We'll call them Greg and Sam. Unsure of either of their ages, but I would assume they're both in their 20s. They're both men. I'm 21 and FTM. This is only a second time running a game, and the second time for all of us playing the system we were using, Daggerheart. I was running the Sablewood one-shot, but because we all had a bit of experience, we decided to make custom characters rather than using the pre-made intended for the adventure. Character creation was fun, until we got to the weapon, and Greg decided he wanted to make a homebrew weapon right there at the table. Sam and I ended up having to wait roughly 15 to 20 minutes for him to do this. We only get 3 hours to play, and Greg doing this means it only took an hour of 2 players to finish character creation, leaving me with only 2 hours to attempt to get through the one-shot. Thankfully, Sablewood is a relatively short adventure. Things went relatively smooth after that point. Up until the party reached the village of Hush. While looking for someone to talk to, the party finds a dwarf woman named Lana. With Sam's encouragement, Greg decided to attempt to seduce the woman, pulling out a real physical book from his bag in real life titled something like 101 Ways to Please Your Lover. I have no idea why he brought this. Though I suppose for some context, this is not Greg's first time flirting with NPCs, though he didn't do the prior session at rant he had done in previous sessions I was a player in. That was always a much more short-lived and more comedic in tone. Dude's literally whipping out the Karma Sutra book. Oh my god, it is... Why? Why do you have that with you? Why do you carry this? When in the right mind do you need to have this outside of the bedroom? Why would you need to have... Is this some sort of weird flirting strategy? Do you really think you're gonna be using the 101 Ways to Please Your Lover book in a campaign, in a TTRPG? Why do you have this book? I mean, there's nothing wrong with having these kind of books. Whatever you decide to have, whatever kind of kinky preference paraphernalia you decide to have is whatever you decide to have. But why are you bringing this to a D&D, autopilot? Why are you bringing this to your Daggerheart table? Why are you bringing this to a TTRPG table instead of just, you know, keep it in the bedroom where it's most likely going to be more used than anywhere else? What? He rolled high enough. And at the time, the absurdity of the book had me laughing. I told him she was into it, that I wasn't comfortable actually acting out her flirting with him. If you're not comfortable with it, then okay, DM, I gotta be honest. You put yourself in the trap. You literally put yourself in a trap. You put yourself in a mouse trap because it said she's into it, but you're not comfortable flirting it out. They just don't say she's not. They just say she's not into it. Don't even let him roll. If you don't want to do any kind of flirting mechanics for your game because you're not interested in acting out flirting in game, then don't do it. You don't have to adhere to everything the player wants if it's not comfortable for you. If you don't want to have some sort of like a romance, like kinky scene, you don't have to do it. You just simply say she's not interested, make them fail the roll and say, if they ask like, why can't I flirt? Just be honest and say, I don't want to play out a flirting roleplay for this campaign. I'm not comfortable with this. There's nothing wrong in the slightest whatsoever to just be out in the open and say you're not comfortable playing out some sort of a romance and flirting at the table if you don't want to be a DM that wants to do flirting or romance at the table. I might do it, but that's because I'm comfortable with it. And if it's, say for example, it matters to the story in some capacity, maybe some sort of like a blind date that needs to be done in order to like capture some sort of a I don't know, some sort of like a noble kidnapper or something. I don't know, something like that. I don't know. I'm just letting making up stuff on the go, honestly. But if you're not comfortable with it, you don't have to do it. Telling the player she's into it, but also saying I'm not comfortable with doing flirting and stuff. It's two contradictory statements. So giving the players a signal of, yeah, she's into it, she's into the flirting, so give a player like a go-to for flirting, but then you're saying that you can't do flirting. You're putting yourself in a box, DM. You're putting yourself in a box. Nobody made the box, you made the box. He then decides the two of them start having sex right then and there, with far too much detail of where they're doing it. And off his Katari's barbed knotted peen, all while Sam's character hides in the corner and pretends this isn't happening. Okay, hold on 1 second. That's not how seduction works. This feels like some sort of like a generic crappy like C tier type of hentai game where you're just like, hey baby, you want to see my pants? I probably look good. I probably look better without them on, and suddenly you just bang. This isn't some sort of like a hentai fantasy. Like, this is the kind of stuff that just happens in some sort of weird hentai RPG where suddenly you just do one skill check, well, one perfect dialogue, and you just bang for like an hour or something. I don't know. Just because you succeed on a seduction check doesn't mean somebody wants to bone you immediately. Just because they find you attractive and they may want to spend some time with you doesn't mean they immediately want a bone. So rushing into that just feels weird and strange to me personally. Also, where's the foreplay? There's no foreplay. There's no lead up to it. Come on, you're missing the most important details here, people. If you're gonna try to flirt with an NPC to try to seduce them, at least put a damn effort into it. You can't just be like, I flirted them once, now we're bang. I have very little input at this point, and I thought it would be just a quick joke, but it just keeps going on. And eventually I decided I had enough and have the NPC that was supposed to be searching to barge into the tavern to interrupt them, and the players completely ignored it. Unfortunately, I'm a chronic people pleaser and bad at actually telling them I'm uncomfortable with something until after it's done. So I just gotta sit back and let the two of them make their jokes, usually chiming in with something. Greg also wanted to roll to see if she got pregnant, which I did let them do. This goes on for a better part of 30 to 40 minutes. So almost the entire last hour we had to play. Effectively meaning we only actually got to play the game for 1 hour, which sucks. While I had spent my entire day leading up to the planning, getting my minis, maps, and cards together, which is a lot of time for me to dedicate to something given that I only get 2 days off from work a week and rarely have time to relax. Then you probably should have stopped him immediately. Listen, if the players are busy boning at the table, at some point you should be like, guys, stop. No, we continue the story. At some point throughout the entire 30 to 40 minutes, at some capacity, you probably should have spoke up. This is the time to speak up. I get it. You said yourself you're not comfortable with something like this and not comfortable speaking up and like putting a stop to this. But if you're going to be running games as a DM or whatever, Daggerheart uses. You need to learn to get yourself in a habit of saying no to the players or speaking up to the players. I know it might be difficult and not everybody is going to be able to do it. There's certain things as a DM you have to do in order to keep the story moving along. And sometimes if players are being a little bit too rowdy or doing this, just boning for 30 to 40 minutes, at some point you need to just speak up and say, hey guys, can we please move on from this? Or can this stop? I want to get back to the rest of the game already. I'm not interested to hear you describe your sexual escapades for 30 to 40 minutes. What the hell? Why do they have so much stamina to describe for 30 to 40 minutes over this joke? I think this joke went on for way too long. This just became like someone's kink being released and stuff, so they can just get off at the table. Do not enable this kind of behavior regardless of what you're doing. Just don't. It's not okay to do. Don't do that, please. I beg you, do not do that. No matter how difficult it is for you to confront people over the table, at some point as a DM you need to put your foot down. You need to learn how to put the foot down. This was a perfect time. Maybe if this happened for 5 minutes, okay, 10 minutes, whatever, still doable. But now for 30 to 40 minutes, at some point I would think you get annoyed and bored enough to want to just put the foot down and just make them stop doing what they're doing. So I'm at an impasse. I really want to run more Daggerheart for this group. And I know this group, do you really want another 30 to 40 minutes of describing boning with a dwarf? Do you really want that? I don't think anybody would want that. It's a crazy thing to say. Why would you want to play for this group? Why? They clearly don't respect your time if you choose invest that into running this campaign or putting this whole thing together, because the only thing they care about is not the next part of the campaign, but just to how hard they can bone a dwarf with a 101 ways to please a lover book. Why would you want to play with these people? It'd be one thing if though it's like enjoyable and stuff and they actually engage in the story and stuff, but they engage in dwarf boning for 30 to 40 minutes. Why would you want to spend time with these people? You're putting all of this work and minis and cutting out cards for Daggerheart and stuff, because Daggerheart used like a little card system for their abilities and everything, but you're doing all that effort just to watch people just sit around for 30 to 40 minutes, describe boning, and nobody says anything. Why would you want to play with this group? And I know next session we'd have at least one extra player, as my friend will be coming, but I also really don't want to run a game if Greg is going to completely take over just to do things like this, as well as the fact that the players were to continue on this point and build off the plot point of Greg impregnating a dwarf and having to pay magic child support, whatever we do with it. If you don't want to play this and people are that interested in Greg's story, just leave this game. Let Greg do their own DMing and roleplay themselves having to pay child support. If you're not interested in this, clearly you're interested in running Daggerheart, but I don't think this is the group for you. I think this group is more interested in whatever Greg's gonna do with his child support payments than anything else going on with the game itself. I think you need to find a different group. You need to find a different group that actually wants to play your game. There are some edits to this though, so let's go through the edits. Edit 2. Yes, I know I should have just told him no, but it's not always that easy when you're in a room alone with two near strangers and try to make the best of things. Wait, hold on. When you're in a room alone with two near okay, so these are, why would you, okay, so just two people. You're running a game for only two people that you don't even know well, and the entire time only two. I assume there's gonna be like extra people. Maybe I assume there's gonna be more people for this and not just the two people. I assume there's just the two problem players that you have, and you probably have some other players playing with you, but you only have two people. Only these two people that allowed themselves for this bit of like banging a dwarf going for 30 to 40 minutes. The only thing they care about is a child. Drop them like a sack of potatoes. Two people is not going to be difficult to replace. You'll find other people out there. Please do yourself a favor to rob these two people. It's not even worth it. Just don't play with these people. These people aren't worth it. There's just two dudes, two chuds that just want to play their own little silly dumb fantasy. Just don't even engage in it. It doesn't matter. This is not worth it. Find actual group to play with, not just two idiots that want to spend 30 to 40 minutes talk about dwarf banging. And try to make the best of things, especially when you put so much time and effort into making this work with, and Sam being somewhat of an authority in this situation as it works with a community space. So my friend's mindset at the time, if Sam is okay with it, then it must be fine. Though he did tell us afterwards to keep it quiet as his boss wouldn't be happy. It's only two people. You're not missing out. I guarantee you. You can find two other people that will probably actually want to play some Daggerheart, not these idiots. Edit 3. I'm assuming the reason everyone is blaming me for this is because I let Greg roll for pregnancy. But in my mind, I was doing it as punishment as he did not want the NPC to be pregnant. Sort of a thing of, if he wants to do this dumb crap, he has to risk magic child support or whatever. I didn't know. Which is something I did to amuse myself to try to make the best out of the situation since I felt stuck there. Outside of being new to DMing, I'm also still fairly new to TRPGs in general. The group had only been going on for a few months. We only ever play every 2 weeks. So I'm sorry, I'm not confident enough yet to tell 2 grown cis men off while I'm in a room alone with them with the door closed. Okay, weird. I don't know why I have to mention they're 2 grown cis men. You're just idiots. They're just 2 idiots. They're 2 dummies that literally just want to talk about banging a dwarf. You're putting all this work, DM, into entertaining 2 idiots. That's all you're doing. You're wasting your time. And by engaging with them in any other capacity other than saying no and stop, when you start bringing up the whole pregnancy table, you know what they're doing? You're engaging with those shenanigans. Yes, it is a consequence of the shenanigans, but anything other than a no or stop is already engaging with the content that they're providing, and you're engaging with the roleplay and stuff. Because you start bringing the pregnancy table, they think, oh, well, now my actions have consequences. So this is DM engaging with the shenanigans here. So while child support payment, how's that going to play out? Because now they think that you're playing along with their stuff. You know what's the best way you can tell somebody that you're not interested in whatever they're doing? By saying it out loud. No, I'm not interested in this. I'm not going to engage with this. I don't want to run this with a campaign. I'm not interested in dwarf banging. I'm not interested in running flirting or any kind of romance in any kind of capacity for this game. This is not that kind of game. Being outright and out loud and establishing boundaries early on. Perhaps maybe during session 0. Actually, you know what? I think maybe a nice solid session 0 will be really healthy for you, especially finding people that maybe are looking for something similar to you instead of running some sort of like a random like flirting dwarf boning game that they want to run. I feel like you kind of put yourself in a box here. I get it. You're saying that you're brand new to RPGs. You're not ready to confront, but at some point you need to be able to just muster up that courage to just speak up and tell them. You need to just say no as a DM. It's one of the responsibilities as a DM is to say no. If you don't think you're confident enough to be able to say no to a player and stop them in their tracks, especially if they're going off of completely off keystore like that, trying to stop some sort of flirting and romance, here are 2 things I recommend. And I'm trying to be as constructive as possible without being overly critical. Session 0s to establish your boundaries and what you're okay and not okay to do and the expectations at the table. And 2, if a player is starting to do something as wild as this and you're not comfortable with this, voice it, say, I'm not comfortable with it, so I'm gonna have to say no to that. You need to listen. There's some things that are going to be difficult to do, but as a DM, you just need to do it. If you can't do it, you may need to rethink about being a DM for this game. I get it. You're interested in the system and you really want to run the game and you really want to do all the prep work and stuff, but there's more than just prepping when it comes to running a game. Sometimes you need to shut the player down and tell them no and be able to be confident enough to tell them no outright in the open. And if you can't do that, I think you have a lot of things to work on. And I'm trying to say it in the most nicest way possible. You need to know how to say no. It's one of the DM's responsibilities and duties to know when to tell player no, and to do so promptly. Make sure that it's going to be told specific and communicated well to the player that this is not happening at this table. And with that, that's going to be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales tomorrow. Bye-bye.